Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Mayorga, and I'm back. Haven't done a video for a couple of weeks, but today I'm going to talk about what are the benefits of doing some volunteer work. In my life, even when I was much younger, the idea of volunteering was always something that I enjoyed doing. I think I was 13 years old when I started to volunteer as a candy striper, and I had a tremendous amount of enjoyment in that. Plus, I was interested in going into the medical field, nursing, and so going and volunteering and seeing what was occurring at the hospital and on the floors was a great way for me to see if this is something that I wanted to do. And then as I continued growing up and going into my adult life, I continued to do volunteer work. And I did a lot of volunteer work at churches. I ran youth groups. I gave back to the community. But in the last couple of years, I've been so busy with my job as teaching at a university and with family and things like that that I kind of scaled back a little bit. But I've always been the kind of person that thinks that giving back to the community is an important thing. So I began to do some research, and I found I live close enough to the HEB pantry warehouse, and I thought that would be a great place to go work, to go volunteer and do some work in the warehouse and help pack groceries and things like that. So I finally did it. I signed myself up to go and do some volunteer work, which is along with my husband. I invited him, and it's a very easy process. You get online, and you can choose the date and the time, and work in the warehouse or other places. But I chose to do the warehouse, and today was the day when I went. And so I thought, I'm gonna do a little video about this, about the importance of volunteering and how it impacts us psychologically and physically. And so there are health benefits. You want to call them potential health benefits or benefits that help us when we do volunteer work. And so here's some of the things that can be improved when you give time to others. And I'm not talking about going and volunteering 24/7 and never leaving a room for your private life. That's not what I'm talking about. But when we volunteer, we get out of ourselves. And so one of the things that I found was really interesting is in going today, I ended up doing being part of logging in whatever was being done and packaged to go out into the community. And I myself and someone else, we both decided that we'd volunteer in that area. And I really was able to meet somebody, and we talked about, interestingly, she was left-handed, I was left-handed. I'm the middle child, she was a middle child. So we had some things in commonality, and we just talked about life. And before we knew it, 2.5 hours had gone by, which was the amount of time that we were um, volunteering, and then it was over, and I felt very good about having done something like that. I learned a lot about the services that the HEB pantry warehouse and the HEB corporation do for the community. And I thought, man, this is really great. I wouldn't have known this if I hadn't done this. But some of the things that are beneficial to us, which I can think back when I started doing volunteer work, was a sense of purpose. What am I doing with my life? At this stage of the game, I'm closer to the end of a career than not. And I still think about what kind of purpose do I have in life, and what do I want to do to make sure that I continue to give back to society. I was taught when I was growing up to never take from society, but to always give back to society. That was my mom's mantra. So she always encouraged us to help and to do for others. So, one of the things that helps in volunteering is if you have a low level of confidence, it can increase that, because everybody that is there, and there was a large group, there were There was a group so large that was from a corporation company who encourages the employees to do volunteer work. And then there were individual people there. There was a group of 4 women that were recognized because they're always there volunteering. And so it's about meeting other people, expanding your horizons, getting to know others and who they are. And you kind of create a feeling of unity, right? Another thing is, I have found that volunteering pulls you away from isolation and loneliness. I'll use my mom as an example. My mom passed away when she was 95. That was about 2 years ago, but almost up to the end, she was a woman that was always doing something, keeping herself busy. And when she worked till she was in her 80s, but besides that, she volunteered as a grandma at elementaries, and she would work alongside teachers and be the grandmother figure for the little ones that were in kindergarten or pre-kinder. She received a tremendous amount of satisfaction doing that. She also did volunteer work at a mental health facility and worked with children that were mentally challenged. And she found a lot of satisfaction in being there and being with this group of other grandma women that gave of their time. And then they did outside activities. They would go on trips, on day trips, or they would go and get together and they would honor them with a dinner. And so I learned from my mom the importance of giving back to society and giving back to community, because that's important. And it does create a sense of collaboration, community, of supporting others that may at that moment not be able to do for themselves. We saw that with the hurricane that hit North Carolina, that people came together. And right now you're seeing it with a lot of uh, violent weather that's going on in Oklahoma and in other states, tornadoes where community comes together. And I think it's important to recognize that the majority of people do come together to help each other. And sometimes people will come from other places. They're not even part of the community, but there's a desire in them to help give back by doing what other people may not be able to do because they're um, they're traumatized from the destruction or the situation that they've gone through. So a sense of purpose and knowing that you're making a difference. I'm going to go back to when I was the candy striper. I used to be on a floor and I'd help the nurses. Yeah, I'd go into the rooms, I talked to the patients, I would help make up beds, and then I moved over to the snack bar, and we had a candy cart, and the candy cart would go through all the different floors, and we would have things to drink, candy people could buy, and sometimes people didn't have any money, so we would go ahead and give them something. But it was always that with that sense of giving back, especially for those that had a need. If you can meet the need, then you meet the need. Okay. But like I said, there's a sense of purpose, making a difference, an increase in self-confidence, because everybody works to get out of their shell. And when you're working together for the common good, you can find some commonalities, and that creates an open door for dialogue. And all of a sudden, you're feeling much more comfortable, and your level of self-confidence has increased. Believe it or not, it also improves the mood. I mean, I've done volunteer work my whole life. My husband has done some, but today, after we finished, he was in a really great mood saying, I feel really good. We can do it again. And so it just elevates, I would think, those good hormones to give you, again, a feeling that you've accomplished something and that you've done something that could help others. Packing up all that food, knowing that it's going to go out into the community, and that it's something that this particular organization, HEB, does. I learned so much while I was there about how they um, have programs available for people who can come in and get trained. They actually have a program to train people that would like to work in a warehouse how to handle all the machinery, so that by the time they get out of that training, which I think it's either 6 weeks or 12 weeks, they're able to go get a job at a warehouse because they can handle all the machinery. And they also have I think it's a 24-week or maybe longer program for people that would like to eventually have their own business, a restaurant, and they teach them everything about how to run a restaurant, how to create a menu, how to cook, how to do this, all the things of running that, which I did not know, and I wouldn't have found out if I hadn't gone to volunteer in the warehouse. Another thing that is really interesting, and there's a couple of studies by Harvard and another university where they have found that people with high blood pressure can lower their blood pressure by volunteering. Just the whole idea of being there and giving, and it reduces stress, it elevates the mood. There's more studies that need to be done, but they have found that it does indicate that it can lower your blood pressure and make you begin to feel physically better. Okay? Uh, I remember today there was a what's it called, like a assembly line, a lot of physical activity where I was in logging in. I was getting up and going back and forth to tag the different pallets that were being put together by the other volunteers in the assembly line. So I was getting some physical activity. And again, you may learn some skills that can be transferred to another job. And then uh, the final one is that it can increase your life expectancy. Again, with some studies, it indicates that. I'm not going to say, oh, you're going to live wherever you go volunteer, because that wouldn't be appropriate for me to say that. But there are studies that indicate that this can happen, and it could go along with better living, more activity, stuff like that. But I would certainly like to encourage everyone that is reading or listening to this video to think about finding something where you can give some of your time. A lot of people think you have to do it every week, every day. No. In this particular situation with HEB, you get online, and if you can do it next week, you get on there and you sign yourself up. Or maybe you want to do it once a month and it becomes something that's of a ritual. But either way, it's beneficial to take yourself out of this little working world all the time and take a breather to do something different. One of the things that I think would be nice, because I like to garden, is finding a place that has a garden in the community, and you can go and cultivate. In fact, they have something like that at the AGB Center, or you can do it at the Botanical Gardens when you give your time. If you love flowers, if you like to be around the earth and the dirt and all of that, that'd be another wonderful thing. But there's many different places where you can give of your time, and it can take you out of self into the world of community and create a connection with others who have the same interests. And all of a sudden, you may have a little social environment that can be very pleasing and give you that sense of purpose. So, I want to thank you for listening to this little video, and I certainly would like to encourage you to think about giving some of your time to a activity that is near and dear to your heart. And thank you so much for listening, and please subscribe. Thank you.